The golden sunset blazed across the dusty main street of Willow Creek, casting long shadows that danced along the weathered boardwalks as Amelia Lancaster stumbled from her horse, blood seeping through her torn sleeve. It was 1875, and the promise of a new life in the West had quickly soured into a desperate flight for survival. The bullet had only grazed her arm, but the pain burned fierce as the summer heat. Sweat beaded on her forehead as she struggled to maintain her balance, the world tilting dangerously around her. Her pursuers wouldn't be far behind. 3 days they'd been chasing her across the plains, determined to reclaim what she'd taken, evidence of their crimes that could hang them all. "Whoa there, miss." A deep voice cut through her panic as strong hands steadied her. "Looks like you're in a heap of trouble." Amelia's gaze lifted to meet eyes the color of a storm-swept sky. The man before her wore trail dust like a second skin, his weathered face partially hidden beneath the shadow of a well-worn Stetson. A star-shaped badge gleamed on his chest, catching the dying light. "Please," she whispered, clutching a leather satchel to her chest. "They're coming." The cowboy's expression hardened as his eyes scanned the horizon. With practiced ease, he helped her toward the sheriff's office. "Name's Cole Dawson. I'm the law in these parts." "Amelia Lancaster," she managed, grimacing as pain shot through her arm. "They killed my father, I have proof." Sheriff Dawson's jaw tightened. "Who did?" "Harrington and his men, the railroad baron." She stumbled and Cole caught her weight against him. "I need to get to Denver, federal marshal there. My father's friend." A cloud of dust rose in the distance, visible even in the fading light. Cole cursed under his breath. "They're riding hard. We don't have much time." He steered her quickly toward the back of the sheriff's office, his decisions made in the span of seconds. "There's a cellar beneath the jailhouse. You'll hide there while I deal with them." "Why are you helping me?" Amelia asked, searching his face for deception. She'd learned the hard way that trust came at a steep price in these lands. The cowboy's expression softened momentarily, a flash of something wounded passing through his eyes. "Because I needed saving too, once upon a time." Sometimes doing right is the only way to quiet those ghosts. Inside the office, Cole moved with purposeful haste, gathering supplies as he lifted a trapdoor hidden beneath a worn rug. "Down you go. There's water and bandages. Tend to that wound. Don't make a sound no matter what you hear." Amelia descended into the darkness, the cool air a stark contrast to the heat above. The trapdoor closed, leaving her alone with her racing thoughts and the precious contents of her satchel, ledgers and letters that documented Harrington's murderous path to wealth and power. Above, she heard the heavy footfalls of multiple men entering the sheriff's office. Her heart hammered in her chest as voices carried through the floorboards. "Evening, gentlemen," Cole's voice rang out, casual and unhurried. "What brings a group like yourselves to my town this time of night?" A gruff voice responded, "Tracking a thief, Sheriff. Young woman, dark hair, likely injured. Stole something mighty valuable from my employer." "That right. And who might your employer be, Mr. James Harrington? Perhaps you've heard of him." Amelia held her breath, clutching the satchel tighter. Everything depended on this moment on a stranger she'd just met. "Can't say that I have," Cole replied, the lie smooth as silk. "No young women pass through town today, injured or otherwise. Though if I do see someone matching that description, I'd be obliged to hear more about these valuables she supposedly took." "Business documents," the man replied tersely. "Nothing that would concern a small-town lawman." "Well now, theft concerns me plenty." "How about you boys water your horses? Get some rest at the hotel. If she turns up, I'll hold her for you." The tension in the room was palpable even from below. After what seemed an eternity, the men reluctantly agreed to Cole's suggestion, but not without a final warning. We'll be watching the roads, Sheriff, if we find out you've been less than truthful with us." "That a threat, mister?" Cole's voice dropped to a dangerous timbre. "Because threatening a lawman is a poor decision in any territory." The men departed without further comment. Minutes later, the trapdoor lifted and Cole's face appeared. "They'll be back. We need to move you tonight." As Amelia climbed out, she noticed Cole gathering supplies with methodical efficiency: ammunition, food, medical supplies. "You're coming with me." "Those men work for Harrington, all right," Cole confirmed grimly. "I've heard stories about what happens to those who cross him. You won't make it to Denver alone. But your position here, my deputy can handle things for a spell." Cole checked his revolver before holstering it. "Besides, I've been meaning to pay the federal marshal a visit myself. Harrington's reach extends beyond your father's murder." Under cover of darkness, they slipped out the back of the jailhouse toward the livery stable. Cole saddled 2 horses while Amelia changed into clothes he'd provided: men's attire that would make her less conspicuous on the trail. "We ride north first," he explained, helping her mount despite her injured arm. "They'll expect us to head straight for Denver. We'll cross back east after a day or two." As they rode out of town, Amelia cast a glance over her shoulder at the flickering lights of Willow Creek. "I've dragged you into my fight, Sheriff Dawson." Cole's face was half hidden in shadow as he looked ahead to the open country. "It was my fight long before you arrived, Miss Lancaster. Harrington's men killed my brother 3 years ago. They called it an accident at the railroad camp, but I knew better." Understanding dawned on Amelia. "So when you said you needed saving too?" "Some wounds don't bleed, but they cut just as deep." Cole adjusted his hat, eyes scanning the horizon. "Let's ride. We've got a long journey ahead." They traveled through the night, the rhythm of hoofbeats and the vast canopy of stars their only companions. By dawn, they put considerable distance between themselves and Harrington's men, but both knew the respite would be temporary. As the first light of morning painted the eastern sky, they made camp in a sheltered ravine. Cole tended to Amelia's wound with gentle hands that belied their strength. "You've done this before," she observed as he wrapped fresh bandages around her arm. "Army surgeon taught me during the war. Comes in handy in a place where doctors are scarce." He secured the bandage with a neat knot. "How'd a lady like yourself end up with Harrington's ledgers anyway?" Amelia's expression darkened. "My father was his accountant. He discovered Harrington had been embezzling from investors and using the money to bribe officials, buy land illegally. When workers complained about conditions, they disappeared." She paused, swallowing hard. "When my father confronted him, planning to take the evidence to authorities, they shot him, made it look like a robbery." Cole nodded slowly. "And you took the evidence?" "I was there that night, hiding in his office. I heard everything." Her voice trembled with the memory. "After they left, I gathered everything I could find. I've been running ever since." "Brave thing to do," Cole said quietly, respect evident in his tone. "Foolish, perhaps, but necessary." Amelia met his gaze. "What about you? How did a man seeking vengeance for his brother become a sheriff?" A ghost of a smile touched Cole's lips. "Figured I could do more good with a badge than a vendetta. Law moves slow, but it moves certain when pushed right." He added more coffee to their small fire. "Get some rest. I'll take first watch." As Amelia settled onto her bedroll, she studied the man who'd risked everything to help her, a stranger with his own wounds, his own reasons for standing against Harrington. In the harsh world of the frontier, such allies were rare and precious. Despite the danger surrounding them, she felt safer than she had in weeks. She fell asleep watching Cole Dawson silhouetted against the brightening sky, his vigilance a shield against the threats that pursued them. The next 3 days established a rhythm: riding at dawn and dusk, resting during the hottest part of the day and the darkest hours of night. They avoided settlements, knowing Harrington's influence could turn any friendly face into an informant. Instead, they relied on Cole's knowledge of the land, finding water where others might see only barren earth, shelter where the uninitiated would perceive nothing but exposure. On the fourth day, they encountered their first serious obstacle. A rushing river, swollen by recent rains in the mountains, blocked their path eastward. "We could follow it north, find a crossing," Amelia suggested, eyeing the churning waters with apprehension. Cole shook his head. "Add 2 days to our journey at least. Harrington's men will have telegraphed ahead to watch the known crossings anyway." He dismounted, studying the river with a practiced eye. "We cross here." "Here?" Amelia's eyes widened. "The current looks deadly. It's wider here, which means it's shallower. See those rocks breaking the surface? Gives us landmarks." He began unloading essential supplies, wrapping them in oilcloth. "We'll lead the horses across. They're strong swimmers, but they'll need guidance." Doubt must have shown on Amelia's face, for Cole's expression softened. "I won't let anything happen to you, trust me." Those 2 words, so simple, yet so loaded with meaning. Trust was a luxury Amelia had been unable to afford since her father's murder. Yet looking at Cole Dawson, at the steadfast certainty in his storm-gray eyes, she found herself nodding. "I do trust you," she said, surprising herself with the truth of it. They secured their supplies and removed their boots. The water was shockingly cold as they entered, the current immediately tugging at their legs. Cole led the way, one hand firmly on his horse's reins, the other extended back to Amelia. She gripped it like a lifeline, her other hand guiding her mount. Halfway across, disaster struck. A branch carried by the current slammed into Amelia's horse, startling the animal. It reared, pulling free of her grasp, and the sudden movement threw Amelia off balance. The current caught her, pulling her under. Water filled her nose and mouth as she tumbled, disoriented by the rushing torrent. Panic seized her lungs, squeezing the air from them. Then strong hands grabbed her, hauling her upward. She broke the surface, gasping to find Cole's arm locked around her waist. "I've got you," he shouted above the roar of the water. "Hold on to me." Together, they fought the current, Cole's powerful strokes carrying them toward the eastern bank. When they finally dragged themselves onto shore, both collapsed, coughing and breathing heavily. Amelia's horse had managed to swim across and stood dripping nearby, but one of their supply packs had been lost to the river. "Are you all right?" Cole asked once he'd caught his breath, concern etched on his features as he pushed soaked hair from her face. Amelia nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. The reality of how close she'd come to drowning struck her suddenly, and to her mortification, tears welled in her eyes. "Hey now," Cole said softly, his thumb brushing away a tear that escaped. "You're safe. You did real well back there." "I nearly drowned us both," she managed, embarrassed by her show of weakness. "Nonsense. Nature threw us a challenge, that's all." He helped her to her feet. "We should get moving before these wet clothes chill us to the bone." They continued eastward, their garments gradually drying in the afternoon sun. By evening, they reached a small grove of cottonwoods, a welcome sight after the open terrain they'd traversed. Cole built a fire while Amelia inventoried their remaining supplies. "We lost most of the coffee," she reported, "and half the jerky. The ammunition stayed dry, thankfully." Cole nodded, feeding small branches to the growing flames. "We can hunt tomorrow. There's plenty of game in these parts." As night fell, the temperature dropped sharply. Despite the fire, Amelia couldn't stop shivering, her body still recovering from the shock of the river. Cole noticed her distress, and without comment moved to sit beside her, draping his dry blanket around her shoulders. The warmth of his body next to hers was startling, a human heat more comforting than any fire. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for saving my life today." "You'd have done the same," he replied simply, stoking the fire. "Your father raised a strong daughter." The mention of her father brought both warmth and pain. "He wanted me to attend university back east, said I had a mind for numbers that shouldn't go to waste." She smiled faintly at the memory. "He was progressive that way, believed women deserved education same as men." Sounds like a man ahead of his time. He was. Amelia looked up at the stars, brilliant in the clear night sky. "What about your family?" Cole was silent for a long moment. "Parents passed when I was young. It was just me and my brother Thomas for most of my life." He was the dreamer between us, always seeing opportunities where others saw obstacles. That's what drew him to the railroad, the promise of being part of something that would connect the country. His voice had grown softer, tinged with memory. "When I got word he'd died in an accident, I knew something was wrong. Thomas was too careful, too skilled. I started asking questions nobody wanted to answer." "And that led you to Harrington," Amelia guessed. Cole nodded. "Indirectly. I tracked down men who'd worked with Thomas. Most were too scared to talk, but one finally did. Told me Thomas had discovered shortcuts being taken with materials, safety being ignored to save costs. He'd threatened to report it. And then he had his accident," Amelia finished grimly. 2 days later." Cole's jaw tightened. "By the time I pieced it all together, the trail was cold. No witnesses would testify, but I knew Harrington was behind it, even if I couldn't prove it." Amelia reached out hesitantly, placing her hand over his. "That's why you became a lawman, to find justice the right way." Cole looked down at their hands, then turned his palm up to clasp hers. "Thomas always said I was too hot-headed for my own good, said I needed to learn patience." A sad smile crossed his face. "Figured he'd approve of the badge more than a gun in Harrington's face." They sat in companionable silence, the fire casting dancing shadows across their features. Amelia was acutely aware of Cole's hand holding hers, of the calluses that spoke of hard work and harder choices. In another life, another time, this moment might have seemed romantic, two souls sharing confidences beneath a starlit sky. But danger shadowed their every step, and romance was a luxury neither could afford. Still, as Amelia drifted towards sleep, her head eventually finding its way to Cole's shoulder, she couldn't help but wonder at the strange turns of fate that had brought them together, two broken people seeking justice, finding unexpected solace in each other's company. Dawn brought renewed urgency to their journey. Cole estimated they were still 3 days from Denver, possibly 4 with the detour they'd been forced to take. They rode steadily through rolling grasslands that gradually gave way to more rugged terrain, the distant peaks of the Rocky Mountains growing larger on the horizon. By midday, Cole's vigilance paid dividends. He spotted dust rising to the southwest, riders moving fast, at least 4 of them. "Could be ordinary travelers," Amelia suggested, though her tone lacked conviction. Cole shook his head. "Moving too direct, too purposeful. They've picked up our trail somehow." He scanned their surroundings, making quick calculations. "There's a mining town about 10 miles northeast. Silver Creek. We might find help there." They pushed their horses harder than before, eating up miles across the scrubland. The dust cloud behind them grew larger, confirmation that they were indeed being pursued. By late afternoon, the simple wooden structures of Silver Creek appeared before them, nestled in a natural depression between low hills. As they rode into town, Amelia noted the typical elements of a mining settlement: saloons outnumbering other businesses, weathered men with hard eyes watching newcomers with suspicion, a general atmosphere of transience. Not an ideal place to seek allies, but perhaps they could lose themselves in the activity. Cole led them to a modest boarding house at the edge of town. "We'll get rooms here, less traffic than the hotel on Main Street." The proprietress, a stern-faced widow named Mrs. Blackburn, eyed them skeptically but asked no questions when Cole placed extra coins on the counter. "We're not looking for trouble," he assured her. "Just passing through." "Trouble tends to find folks whether they're looking or not," she replied cryptically, handing over 2 keys. Supper's at 6. In the privacy of her small room, Amelia finally opened the satchel to check that its contents remained intact after their river crossing. The ledgers were damp at the edges but legible, the letters safely protected in oilcloth. She traced her father's handwriting on one page, resolve strengthening within her. His meticulous documentation would be Harrington's downfall if they could reach Denver. A soft knock at her door startled her. She quickly closed the satchel before opening it to find Cole, his expression grim. "They've reached town," he said quietly. "4 men asking questions at the saloon. We need to be ready to move." "But we just got here," Amelia protested. "The horses need rest." "I know." Cole ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident. "But if someone recognizes me as a lawman, or if they offer enough money for information." He didn't need to finish the thought. Amelia considered their options. "What if we split up temporarily? I can blend in better alone, especially in a mining town where people mind their business." "You're more recognizable." Cole's immediate frown showed his opinion of that suggestion. "Not a chance. These aren't just hired guns, they're killers." "Which is exactly why having us together makes an easier target," Amelia countered. "I'm not proposing we separate for long. Just enough to confuse them, make them divide their forces." She could see Cole weighing her words, reluctance warring with tactical consideration. "It's too risky," he finally said, "but you're right about one thing: we need to change our approach." He outlined a new plan. They would spread word that they were continuing northeast at dawn, while actually slipping out of town after midnight, heading southeast toward Denver directly. It might buy them precious time if Harrington's men took the bait. As darkness fell over Silver Creek, they ate a quiet supper in the boarding house dining room, careful to maintain the pretense of casual travelers. Cole excused himself afterward, ostensibly to check on their horses, but actually to survey the town and locate their pursuers. Amelia retired to her room, repacking their supplies for a swift departure. The sound of raised voices from the street drew her to the window. In the dim light of the street lamps, she could make out a confrontation outside the saloon, one man shoving another, words too distant to discern clearly. With a start, she recognized Cole's broad shoulders and stance. He appeared to be facing down 2 men, his posture deceptively relaxed but alert. The situation was escalating rapidly. Without hesitation, Amelia grabbed her revolver and hurried downstairs, slipping out the back door of the boarding house. She circled around to approach the scene from behind the saloon, staying in shadows. As she drew closer, she could finally hear the exchange. "Telling you, I've never been to Willow Creek," Cole was saying, his voice steady. "You've mistaken me for someone else." "That's funny," one of the men replied, "because we've got a description matches you perfect. Tall fella, dark hair, moves like he's military trained." "Traveling with a dark-haired woman. Sound familiar now?" "Lots of dark-haired women in the territory," Cole responded. "And I learned my walking in Texas, not the Army." The second man, shorter but broader, stepped closer. "Where is she, lawman? The boss wants what she stole." "Hand her over. He might let you live despite your interference." "I don't know what you're talking about," Cole maintained. Now, if you'll excuse me, the shorter man drew his gun with surprising speed. No more games. You're coming with us until the girl shows herself. Amelia's heart hammered in her chest. She could see two more of Harrington's men positioned strategically across the street, blocking potential escape routes. Cole was surrounded, and while he was skilled, 4 against 1 were poor odds. Making a split-second decision, Amelia stepped into the light, her revolver trained on the shorter man. "Let him go," she called, her voice steadier than she felt. All heads turned toward her. Cole's expression flashed from surprise to alarm. "Amelia, get back." "Well, well," the first man drawled, a slow smile spreading across his weathered face. "Look who decided to join us. Miss Lancaster, I presume?" "I have what Harrington wants," she said, ignoring Cole's warning, "but he'll never see it if you harm the sheriff." "Brave words," the man replied, "but you're outnumbered and outgunned. Drop your weapon." Tension crackled in the air as Amelia held her position. She could see the other 2 men moving to flank her. Cole's hand hovered near his holster, his eyes calculating distances and angles. What happened next unfolded in a blur of motion and sound. Cole dropped to one knee as he drew, firing at the shorter man. Simultaneously, Amelia dove behind a water trough as bullets splintered the wood around her. She returned fire, aiming for the man approaching from her right. The street erupted in chaos. Townspeople scattered, seeking cover from the sudden gunfight. Through the confusion, Amelia glimpsed Cole engaging with 2 of Harrington's men, his movements efficient and deadly. One fell, clutching his shoulder. The other retreated behind a wagon. A bullet whistled past Amelia's ear, too close for comfort. She spotted the 4th man circling toward her position. Taking careful aim, she fired twice. Her second shot found its mark, sending him stumbling back. "Amelia," Cole's voice cut through the din. "The alley." Understanding his intent, she broke cover, running low toward the narrow passage between buildings. Gunfire followed her, bullets kicking up dust at her heels. She reached the alley just as Cole appeared at the other end, blood streaming from a graze on his temple. Together they raced through the back streets of Silver Creek, the sounds of pursuit growing fainter behind them. Cole led them to the livery stable where they retrieved their horses, throwing saddles on with desperate speed. "So much for not drawing attention," Amelia gasped as they mounted. Despite the gravity of their situation, Cole's mouth quirked in a half-smile. "I believe that ship has sailed, Miss Lancaster." They galloped out of town, taking a game trail that wound through dense underbrush difficult to follow in daylight, nearly impossible in darkness. Only when they'd put several miles between themselves and Silver Creek did Cole signal to slow their pace. "Are you hit?" he asked, his eyes searching her for injuries in the dim moonlight. "No," Amelia's gaze fixed on his bloodied temple. "But you are. Just a graze." He touched it gingerly. "Had worse shaving." The attempt at humor fell flat as the reality of their narrow escape sank in. "They knew exactly where to look for us," Amelia said. "Someone in Willow Creek must have telegraphed ahead." Cole nodded grimly. "Harrington's reach is longer than I anticipated. We need to avoid towns completely from here on. That means rougher country, slower progress. Better slow than dead." Cole oriented himself by the stars. "We'll head southeast cross-country. There's a line shack about 15 miles from here where we can rest briefly, then continue before dawn." They rode in silence for a time, each processing the events in Silver Creek. Amelia's mind kept returning to the moment Cole had faced down the gunman, his unwavering courage, his refusal to betray her whereabouts despite the danger to himself. Something warm unfurled in her chest at the memory, something she was afraid to examine too closely. "You shouldn't have revealed yourself," Cole finally said, breaking the silence. "They could have killed you on sight. They were about to take you," she replied simply. "I couldn't let that happen." He glanced at her, his expression unreadable in the darkness. "Why not? The smart play would have been to escape while they were occupied with me, get the evidence to Denver." Amelia considered his question seriously. The logical answer was that she needed his protection, his knowledge of the territory. But the truth ran deeper, more complex. "Because you were willing to die to protect a woman you barely know," she said softly. "Because in a world where most people look out only for themselves, you chose to stand for what's right." She met his gaze directly. "Because you're a good man, Cole Dawson, and those seem to be in short supply these days." Something shifted in Cole's expression, a softening around the eyes, a vulnerability quickly masked. He cleared his throat. "Well, I'd say that makes us even on the saving front." The line shack proved to be little more than 4 walls and a roof, abandoned by cowhands with the changing seasons. Still, it offered shelter and concealment, both precious commodities in their situation. They tended the horses, ensuring they were watered and fed before seeing to their own needs. Amelia insisted on cleaning Cole's head wound, her touch gentle as she wiped away dried blood. "You're fortunate," she remarked. "Half an inch difference and we'd be having a very different conversation." "Luck's been on our side more than once this journey," Cole agreed, wincing slightly as she applied antiseptic. "Though I'd prefer not to test it further if possible." "As would I." She finished bandaging his temple, her fingers lingering perhaps a moment longer than necessary. "There, try not to get shot at again." "I'll do my level best, madam." A smile touched his lips, transforming his features. In that moment, with the tension temporarily eased, Amelia was struck by how handsome he was, not in the polished way of Eastern gentlemen, but with a rugged authenticity that spoke of a life lived on his own terms. They shared a meager meal of hardtack and dried beef, conserving their dwindling supplies. Outside, the night sounds of the wilderness created a symphony of rustling leaves, distant owl calls, and the occasional howl of a coyote. "What will you do?" Amelia asked suddenly. "After we reach Denver, after Harrington faces justice. Will you return to Willow Creek?" Cole considered the question, leaning back against the rough wooden wall. "Haven't thought that far ahead. The badge was a means to an end in some ways." He studied the calluses on his hands. "Might be time for something new, such as," he shrugged, "always had a notion to try ranching, buy some land, raise horses." A hint of self-consciousness entered his tone. "Foolish dream, perhaps." "I don't think it's foolish at all," Amelia said earnestly. "Building something lasting, something that's your own, that's what most of us want, isn't it?" "And you?" Cole asked. "What awaits Amelia Lancaster after justice is served?" The question gave her pause. For so long, her entire focus had been on exposing Harrington, on honoring her father's memory. She'd given little thought to what came after. "I don't know," she admitted. "I sold our home to finance this journey. There's nothing waiting for me back east." She twisted a loose thread on her sleeve. "Perhaps I'll take my father's advice belatedly. Find a university that will accept a woman." "You'd excel at that," Cole said with conviction. "Got a sharp mind. Any school would be fortunate to have you." His confidence in her abilities warmed her from within. "Thank you," she said softly, "for everything. Not just the saving my life parts, but for believing in me." "Many men wouldn't have." "Many men are fools," Cole replied simply. "Get some rest now. Dawn comes early and we've still got hard riding ahead." They departed before first light, continuing southeast across increasingly rugged terrain. The line shack had provided much-needed respite, but both were acutely aware that Harrington's men would not abandon the chase. Their only advantage was the difficult country they traversed, no clear trails to follow, no settlements where information could be bought. By noon on the second day after Silver Creek, Denver's outskirts appeared on the horizon, a sprawling collection of buildings nestled against the dramatic backdrop of the mountains. The sight brought both relief and anxiety. They were nearly at their destination, yet the final approach would be the most dangerous. Harrington will have men watching the main roads, Cole said as they paused to rest the horses. Possibly the marshal's office as well. How do we reach Marshal Evans without being intercepted? Amelia asked. Cole considered their options. I know a newspaper editor in town, Samuel Whitman. Honest man, been publishing pieces critical of the railroad's business practices. He might help us contact Evans discreetly. They approached Denver as evening fell, using the gathering darkness as cover. The city had grown dramatically since the gold rush days, now boasting paved streets, gas lighting, and substantial brick buildings alongside the wooden structures of its earlier incarnation. They avoided the busier thoroughfares, keeping to side streets as they made their way to the offices of the Denver Chronicle. To their relief, Samuel Whitman was working late, the windows of his office illuminated despite the hour. Cole tapped quietly at the back door, and after a moment of hesitation, the editor admitted them. Whitman was a thin man with intelligent eyes magnified by wire-rimmed spectacles. Recognition dawned on his face as he regarded Cole. Sheriff Dawson, this is unexpected. We need your help, Sam, Cole said without preamble. It's about James Harrington. The name acted like a key, unlocking Whitman's immediate attention. He ushered them into his cluttered office, locking the door behind them. I've been trying to expose that man's corruption for years. What have you got? Amelia placed her satchel on the desk, carefully removing the ledgers and letters. Evidence of embezzlement, bribery, and murder. My father was Harrington's accountant. He documented everything before they killed him. Whitman's eyes widened as he examined the materials. This is extraordinary. The missing funds from the Henderson Creek project, the mysterious land acquisitions before the railroad announcement, it's all here. We need to get this to Marshal Evans, Cole explained. But Harrington's men are after us. They'll be watching his office. The editor nodded thoughtfully. Evans is a good man, incorruptible, but you're right to be cautious, he considered for a moment. He takes supper at the Capitol Grill most evenings, private room in the back. I could get a message to him. Perfect, Cole agreed. Tell him to meet us here. While they waited, Whitman provided them with their first proper meal in days, beef stew and fresh bread from a nearby restaurant. As they ate, he shared what he knew of Harrington's recent activities. He's in Denver now, actually, Whitman revealed, attending a railroad commission meeting, lobbying for exclusive rights to the mountain passes. The news that their adversary was so near sent a chill through Amelia. Does he know about your investigations into his dealings? Oh, he knows, Whitman confirmed grimly. I've received threats, had my office vandalized. But a newspaper lives and dies by its credibility. I won't be silenced by thugs. Cole nodded approvingly. Men like you keep the rest of us honest, Sam. An hour later, Marshal Robert Evans arrived. He was older than Amelia had expected, with silver at his temples and lines etched deeply around his eyes, but he carried himself with unmistakable authority. His gaze softened when it fell on Amelia. Miss Lancaster, he said quietly, you have your father's eyes. Edward was a dear friend. Tears pricked at Amelia's eyes at the mention of her father. He spoke highly of you, Marshal, said you were the most honorable man he knew. I failed him, Evans said, regret evident in his tone. When I received his telegram saying he had evidence against Harrington, I was in Wyoming territory. By the time I returned, He shook his head. "I've been trying to build a case ever since, but Harrington covers his tracks well." "Not well enough," Amelia replied, gesturing to the documents spread across Whitman's desk. For the next hour, they walked Evans through the evidence, the falsified accounting, the bribes documented in code that her father had deciphered, the connection between accidents at work sites and workers who had raised safety concerns. With each revelation, the marshal's expression grew grimmer. "This is enough to arrest him immediately," Evans finally declared, "to bring charges of fraud, corruption, and conspiracy to commit murder." "What about his men?" Cole asked. "4 of them have been tracking us since Willow Creek. They'll report back to someone else in his organization." Evans nodded thoughtfully. "We'll need to coordinate arrests of his key associates simultaneously. Prevent anyone from destroying additional evidence." He turned to Whitman. "Can you print none of this until we've made the arrests?" "My integrity is wounded," Whitman replied with a wry smile, "but I'll manage restraint for 48 hours. "Good man." Evans rose to his feet. "I'll assemble my deputies tonight. We move at dawn." He looked to Cole and Amelia. "You two should remain here. It's safer than a hotel, and I'll need your formal statements once Harrington is in custody." After Evans departed, Whitman showed them to a small apartment above the newspaper offices where he sometimes slept when working late. "It's not luxurious," he apologized, "but it's secure. No one knows about this access stair except my staff." Left alone for the first time in days without the immediate pressure of pursuit, Amelia felt a curious deflation, as though the constant tension that had sustained her was suddenly released, leaving her strangely hollow. Cole seemed to sense her mood. "You did it," he said quietly. "Your father would be proud." "We did it," she corrected him. "I'd never have made it this far without you." She moved to the small window, looking out at the nighttime streets of Denver. "It doesn't bring him back, though, does it?" Cole joined her at the window, his presence solid and reassuring. "No, justice isn't the same as healing, but it's a start." Amelia turned to face him, struck again by how much had changed since their first meeting outside the sheriff's office in Willow Creek. The man before her had become more than an ally in danger. He had become essential to her in ways she was only beginning to understand. "What happens now?" she asked softly. "Now we wait," Cole replied, misinterpreting her question. "By this time tomorrow, Harrington will be behind bars." "That's not what I meant." Amelia gathered her courage. "What happens to us, Cole, when this is over? When we no longer have a common enemy to fight?" Understanding dawned in his eyes, followed by something warmer, more personal than she'd allowed herself to hope for. "That depends," he said carefully, "on what you want to happen, Amelia." Her name on his lips sent a tremor through her. "I think." She hesitated, then pressed on. "I think I'd like to see if we can discover who we are together when we're not running for our lives." Cole's smile was slow and genuine, transforming his features. He reached out, his calloused hand gently tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "I'd like that very much." The distance between them seemed to vanish as he drew her closer, his arms encircling her with a tenderness that belied their strength. When their lips met, it felt like coming home after a long journey, familiar somehow, despite being entirely new. Dawn brought a flurry of activity as Marshal Evans and his deputies executed their plan. From their vantage point above the newspaper office, Cole and Amelia watched as Harrington was escorted from the Grand Hotel in handcuffs, his face a mask of outrage and disbelief. Throughout the day, reports filtered in through Whitman of additional arrests across Denver and beyond, Harrington's network of corruption unraveling thread by thread. By evening, they were summoned to the federal building to provide formal statements. Amelia recounted everything: her father's discoveries, his murder, her flight with the evidence. Cole testified about Harrington's men pursuing them, the attempted ambush in Silver Creek, and his own suspicions regarding his brother's death years earlier. "We'll investigate that as well," Evans assured him. "With Harrington in custody, witnesses may be more willing to come forward." When they emerged from the building, the setting sun cast long shadows across the street. For the first time in weeks, Amelia felt the weight lift from her shoulders. It wasn't over there would be trials, testimony, the slow grinding of legal proceedings, but the most dangerous part had passed. "So," Cole said as they walked back toward Whitman's office, "about that conversation we started last night." Amelia smiled up at him. "Yes, Sheriff Dawson. I've been thinking about that ranch I mentioned, raising horses." He cleared his throat, suddenly less certain than the man who had faced down armed pursuers without flinching. "There's good land available south of here. Fertile valley, plenty of water. Big enough for a decent operation, small enough for one man to manage, or perhaps a couple." Her heart skipped at the implication. "Are you asking me something, Cole?" He stopped walking, turning to face her fully. "I know it's fast. We've known each other under extraordinary circumstances. Maybe in normal times." He shook his head. "But I've learned life doesn't always give you second chances or time to deliberate. Sometimes you have to recognize what matters when it appears before you." "And what matters to you?" Amelia asked softly. "You," he said simply. "I can't offer much. I've got some savings, enough for a modest start. It would be a hard life, especially for someone raised with more refinement." Amelia laughed gently. "Cole, I've spent the past 3 weeks sleeping on the ground, crossing rivers and dodging bullets. I think I can handle a little hard work." Her expression grew more serious. "But you should know I still want to study, perhaps not immediately, but eventually." "I wouldn't have it any other way," he replied earnestly. "There's a women's college being established right here in Denver. No reason you couldn't attend while we build our future." Our future. The words resonated within her, filling empty spaces she hadn't realized existed. "In that case, Sheriff Dawson, I accept your very roundabout proposal." His answering smile was brilliant in its joy. He lifted her off her feet in an embrace that spoke of promises and possibilities, of healing and new beginnings. When he set her down, his expression had grown thoughtful. "What is it?" she asked. "Just thinking about that moment outside my office in Willow Creek. You asked why I was helping you. And you said you needed saving too," Amelia recalled. Cole nodded, his eyes soft with emotion. "I didn't realize then how true that was. I was existing, not living. Focused on vengeance, not justice. You changed that." "We saved each other," Amelia said, rising on her tiptoes to press a gentle kiss to his lips. "And now we build something new together." The trials that followed over the next 6 months became the talk of Colorado Territory and beyond. James Harrington, once one of the most powerful men in the West, found himself facing a litany of charges. With Amelia's evidence and testimony from former associates now willing to speak, his conviction was all but assured. Cole received confirmation that his brother's death had indeed been orchestrated by Harrington's foreman after Thomas threatened to expose unsafe conditions. The foreman, facing his own charges, provided testimony that brought closure, if not comfort. True to his word, Cole purchased land in a verdant valley 30 miles south of Denver. Together with Amelia, he began building both a home and a horse breeding operation, starting with 2 quality mares and a stallion with impressive bloodlines. Their wedding was a modest affair held that autumn, with Marshall Evans giving the bride away and Samuel Whitman serving as best man. Amelia wore a dress of pale blue silk, a splash of extravagance in their otherwise practical new life. As winter settled over the valley, they found rhythm in their days, rising before dawn to tend the horses, working side by side to improve the modest cabin that would eventually be replaced by a proper home, planning for spring plantings and future expansions. In the evenings, they would sit before the fire, Amelia often reading aloud from books on advanced mathematics or animal husbandry, while Cole carved chess pieces from wood. When spring arrived, bringing new grass to the valley and the birth of their first foal, Amelia received news that she'd been accepted to the Colorado Women's College for the fall term. The 3-day-a-week schedule would allow her to continue her work at the ranch, while pursuing the education her father had always wanted for her. On a warm evening in late May, as they sat on the porch of their expanding cabin watching the sun set behind the mountains, Cole took Amelia's hand in his. "Happy?" he asked simply. She smiled, leaning her head against his shoulder. "Remarkably so. Though I keep waiting for Harrington's men to appear over that ridge," Cole chuckled. "Old habits, but Harrington won't see daylight for 20 years and his operation has been dismantled." "I know," she sighed contentedly. "Sometimes I still can't believe how much has changed in a year. From losing everything to finding." She gestured to the ranch, the horses grazing peacefully in the distance, and finally to him. "Finding everything," Cole suggested. "Something like that." Amelia's smile turned mischievous. "Though I should tell you, Sheriff Dawson, that everything is about to expand somewhat." Cole's brow furrowed in momentary confusion before understanding dawned. "You mean?" Amelia nodded, her eyes bright with happiness. "In about 7 months, if the doctor's estimation is correct." Cole's expression transformed from shock to wonder to unbridled joy. He lifted her from the chair, spinning her in a gentle circle before setting her carefully back on her feet. "A baby," he said in awe. "Our baby, scared?" she asked, reading the flicker of uncertainty that passed briefly over his features. "Terrified," he admitted with a laugh. "I know horses, Amelia. Babies are a different matter entirely." "Well, fortunately," she replied, wrapping her arms around his neck, "we're rather good at figuring things out together." As twilight deepened around them, casting long shadows across their land, Cole held her close, marveling at the journey that had brought them to this moment. From a desperate meeting on a dusty street to building a future neither could have imagined. "I love you, Amelia Dawson," he whispered against her hair. "And I love you," she replied, the words simple but carrying the weight of everything they'd overcome, everything they'd become to each other. "My cowboy who needed saving as much as I did." Their laughter mingled in the evening air, drifting out across the valley that was now home, a testament to the healing power of justice served and love discovered in the most unexpected circumstances. In the years that followed, the Dawson Ranch flourished. Their horses became known throughout the territory for their quality and temperament, drawing buyers from as far as California and Texas. The modest cabin evolved into a comfortable 2-story home, with a wide porch that wrapped around 3 sides, the perfect place to watch sunsets or summer thunderstorms rolling across the valley. Amelia completed her studies at Colorado Women's College with highest honors, eventually teaching mathematics part-time to supplement their income during the early years. Her practical knowledge, combined with Cole's intuitive understanding of horses, proved a formidable partnership in business as well as life. Their son, Thomas Edward Dawson, named for the brothers they had each lost, arrived on a snowy December night in 1876. He grew into a curious, adventurous boy with his mother's quick mind and his father's steady temperament. 3 years later, they welcomed a daughter, Sarah Grace, whose determination and spirit kept them constantly on their toes. Cole never returned to wearing a badge, finding greater satisfaction in building something lasting than in enforcing the law. However, his reputation for fairness and integrity remained, and he frequently served as mediator in local disputes or advisor to the county sheriff on particularly difficult cases. Twice yearly, Marshal Evans would visit, bringing news from Denver and stories that captivated the children. Samuel Whitman became a regular correspondent, sending newspapers and books for Amelia's growing library. Through these connections and others they formed in the community, the isolation that often characterized frontier life was tempered by friendship and shared purpose. On the 10th anniversary of their first meeting, Cole surprised Amelia with a journey retracing their route from Willow Creek to Denver, but this time in comfort rather than desperate flight. Towns that had once represented danger were now places to explore together, creating new memories to overlay the old. When they reached the river that had nearly claimed Amelia's life, they found a sturdy bridge now spanning its width. Standing in the middle, looking down at the rushing water below, Cole took her hand. "Some obstacles become easier to cross with time," he observed. Amelia squeezed his hand in response. "And some journeys are worth taking no matter how difficult the path." The final stop on their anniversary journey was the cemetery in Denver where Amelia's father was buried. They stood together before his headstone, Amelia placing fresh flowers as she had each year since justice had been served. "I wish he could have known you," she said softly. "Known the life we've built." Cole wrapped an arm around her shoulders. "He knows," he replied with quiet conviction. "And I believe he's proud of the woman you've become, scholar, businesswoman, mother. You've honored his memory in every choice you've made." As they returned to their ranch, to the children excitedly awaiting their return under the watchful eye of Cole's cousin who had come to help, Amelia reflected on the strange turns of fate that had brought her to this life. The loss and danger that had ultimately led to love and security. The desperate plea for help that had connected her to a man who understood, better than most, what it meant to seek justice and find healing in its pursuit. That night, after the children were asleep, Cole and Amelia sat on their porch beneath a canopy of stars, much as they had on that first evening at the line shack, but now with the comfortable silence of two people who had weathered storms together and emerged stronger. "Do you ever think about how differently things might have turned out?" Amelia asked. "If you hadn't been in your office that day in Willow Creek, if you decided not to help me?" Cole considered her question thoughtfully. "Sometimes, but I've never regretted the choice I made." He smiled, the lines around his eyes deepening evidence of a decade of both laughter and concern. "Best decision of my life, helping that desperate woman with the bullet wound, even though it nearly got you killed multiple times," Amelia teased. "Especially because of that," Cole replied with a chuckle. "Nothing reveals character like danger. I knew you were extraordinary when you faced down Harrington's men in Silver Creek instead of running." "I was terrified," she admitted. "That's what courage is," Cole said. "Being afraid but doing what's right anyway." He took her hand, his thumb tracing the simple gold band on her finger. "Thank you for asking me why I helped you that day, for making me articulate something I hadn't fully understood myself. That you needed saving too." Amelia's voice was gentle with memory. Cole nodded. "I was lost before you, Amelia, existing but not living. You didn't just give me purpose, you gave me a future I couldn't have imagined." Under the vast Colorado sky, with the soft sounds of their sleeping children carrying from the open windows, they shared a kiss that held both the passion of their early days and the deeper, richer connection that comes only with time and trust. Two people who had once been broken by loss and driven by vengeance had found in each other not just healing but joy, the kind of joy that expands with sharing, that transforms wounds into wisdom and fear into courage. Their story, which had begun with desperate flight and danger, had evolved into one of building and nurturing, of creating a legacy that honored those they had lost by fully embracing the life they had found together. And as they retired to their bedroom, hands intertwined as they had been since that fateful day when a wounded woman asked a cowboy why he was helping her, they carried with them the knowledge that some journeys never truly end, they simply change direction, leading to destinations more beautiful than either could have imagined alone.